Today we are going to explore a concept by psychologist Walter Riso about emotional detachment, but adapted to the unique challenges we face after 60. At 67, I discovered something that completely changed my understanding of emotional freedom. And I need to share this with you, because what I learned contradicts almost everything we are told about aging gracefully. The truth is that based on decades of observation by Walter Riso and other psychologists, only a small minority of women over 60 achieve true emotional freedom. Studies show that less than 15% of the elderly report high levels of emotional well-being. Journal of Happiness Studies, 2019. And for women over 60, this number is even lower. And it has absolutely nothing to do with physical health, exercise routines, or even financial security. It's about something much deeper and more challenging that most women never address. You spent decades believing that feeling heavy, overwhelmed, and emotionally exhausted was simply part of aging. You thought that the weight you carry in your chest, the constant worry, the inability to leave past hurts behind, was just what happened when you accumulated years of life experience. You were wrong, and discovering this can transform not only how you feel, but also how you move through each day. Today we are going to explore a concept by psychologist Walter Riso about emotional detachment, but adapted to the unique challenges we face after 60. At 67, I discovered something that completely changed my understanding of emotional freedom. And I need to share this with you, because what I learned contradicts almost everything we are told about aging gracefully. The truth is that based on decades of observation by Walter Riso and other psychologists, only a small minority of women over 60 achieve true emotional freedom. Studies show that less than 15% of the elderly report high levels of emotional well-being. Journal of Happiness Studies, 2019. And for women over 60, this number is even lower. And it has absolutely nothing to do with physical health, exercise routines, or even financial security. It's about something much deeper and more challenging that most women never address. You spent decades believing that feeling heavy, overwhelmed, and emotionally exhausted was simply part of aging. You thought that the weight you carry in your chest, the constant worry, the inability to leave past hurts behind, was just what happened when you accumulated years of life experience. You were wrong, and discovering this can transform not only how you feel, but also how you move through each day. I remember Sarah, a woman I met at a community centre, who at 64 still talked about her divorce from 20 years ago as if it had happened yesterday. She could recite every cruel word her ex-husband said, every moment of betrayal, every injustice. She had created a sanctuary for her suffering, and she visited it religiously. When I asked her why she held on so tightly to those memories, she looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "But if I let this go, who would I be?" This is the trap. You start to believe that your pain is your identity, that your complaints are your story, that without them you would somehow disappear. But the psychological truth is that clinging to grievances does not preserve your identity. It traps it. Each moment you spend revisiting old grievances is a moment stolen from present joy. Every gram of energy you pour into maintaining your museum of grievances is energy unavailable to create new experiences. You who achieve lightness understand that remembering is different from reliving. You can acknowledge what happened without carrying it like a backpack full of stones. You learned to be a historian of your experience instead of a prisoner of it. The second emotional weight that keeps you trapped is the burden of unfinished emotional business. This manifests as relationships you never resolved, conversations you never had, apologies you never received or never gave. You carry these unfinished stories like open files in your mind, constantly running in the background, draining your emotional resources. At 61, I still carried anger toward my mother for things she said when I was 30. I held resentment against friends who disappointed me, hurt feelings from colleagues who ignored me, frustration with family members who never understood me. I had dozens of these emotional files open, each requiring mental energy to maintain, each contributing to the weight I felt. The revelation came when I realized that closure does not require the other person's participation. You have been waiting for apologies that will never come, for acknowledgements that will never be offered, for understanding that will never be achieved. You are giving other people the power to veto your emotional freedom, and most of them don't even know they have it. True closure is an internal process. It is the decision to close the file yourself, to stop waiting for external validation or resolution. It is choosing to complete the story on your own terms, with compassion for everyone involved, including yourself. This does not mean pretending that things didn't happen or excusing harmful behavior. It means refusing to let unfinished business keep ending you. The third weight is perhaps the most insidious because it disguises itself as a virtue. This is the burden of excessive responsibility, the belief that you must carry the emotional load of everyone else in addition to your own. So many women over 60 have spent decades being the emotional manager of the family, the friend who always listens, the person everyone turns to in crisis. You identified so much with this role that you don't know how to exist without it. I met Eleanor at a book club, a 70-year-old woman who seemed exhausted despite being retired. She told me that she spent her days managing her adult children's problems, mediating family conflicts, providing emotional support to friends, and worrying about everyone she loved. She said, "I just can't help myself. When someone I love is struggling, I have to fix it." The weight of carrying everyone else's emotional world had bent her shoulders and diminished her spirit. The psychological reality is that taking responsibility for other people's emotions is not love. It is codependency. It doesn't help them grow stronger. It keeps them dependent. It doesn't show care. It shows a lack of confidence in their ability to handle their own lives. And it certainly doesn't make you indispensable. It makes you exhausted. Learning to love without burdening, to care without controlling, to support without sacrificing. This is one of the most challenging yet liberating skills you can develop. It requires setting boundaries that may seem selfish, but are actually essential. It means saying no to requests that drain you, and yes to activities that restore you. The fourth emotional burden that keeps you heavy is the weight of perfectionism and the need to prove your worth through performance. Even at 60, 70, 80, many women are still trying to gain approval, still measuring themselves against impossible standards, still believing that their worth depends on their ability to meet everyone else's expectations. This perfectionism appears in how you maintain your home, how you present yourself, how you interact with family, even how you age. You feel pressure to be the perfect grandmother, the perfect friend, the perfect example of graceful aging. You exhaust yourself trying to control how others perceive you, trying to manage your image, trying to avoid criticism or judgment. The truth that sets you free is this: you have nothing left to prove. At this stage of life, the opinions of others are just noise. The approval you have been seeking externally can only be found internally. The value you have been trying to gain through performance already exists, simply because you exist. I remember the day I decided to stop performing. I was at a family gathering, feeling anxious about whether the food was perfect, whether my house was clean enough, whether I was being fun enough. Suddenly I realized that I was 65 years old and still trying to earn a gold star from people whose opinions had no real impact on my life. I made a decision at that moment to simply be present instead of performing, and the relief was immediate and profound. The fifth burden is what I call the tyranny of shoulds. This is the internal voice that constantly tells you what you should be doing, how you should be feeling, what you should want at this stage of life. Society has very specific expectations for women over 60, and many of us exhaust ourselves trying to meet them or rebel against them. You should be content with less. You should be grateful for what you have. You should focus on your family. You should slow down. You should accept your limitations. You should be wise and serene and satisfied. These shoulds become a prison that prevents you from discovering what you truly want and need. You who achieve lightness have learned to replace should with could. Instead of asking what you should do, you ask what you could do. Instead of focusing on obligations, you explore possibilities. Instead of accepting limitations imposed by others, you test your own limits. At 68, my friend Margaret decided that she could learn to paint, despite never having had any artistic training. At 72, she could travel alone to places that scared and excited her. At 75, she could end a friendship that had become toxic, despite decades of history. Each could expand her world, while each should contract it. The sixth emotional weight is perhaps the deepest. The fear of irrelevance, the terror that your best years are behind you, that you no longer matter in a world that worships youth. This fear creates a desperate clinging to the past, a resistance to change, a weight that comes from believing that your story is ending instead of transforming. This fear manifests in countless ways. You cling to roles that no longer serve you because you are afraid of who you would be without them. You resist new experiences because you are afraid of looking foolish. You avoid taking risks because you believe you don't have time to recover from failures. You minimize your dreams because you think it's too late to pursue them. But here's what I've learned. Irrelevance is not an inevitable consequence of aging. It's a choice. You who remain vital, engaged, and light are the ones who understand that each stage of life offers unique opportunities for growth, contribution, and joy. You don't waste energy lamenting your younger self. You invest energy in discovering who you are becoming. The transformation from heavy to light doesn't happen overnight, and it's not about adopting a positive attitude or pretending that everything is fine. It's about doing the deep work of examining what you are carrying and consciously choosing what to let go of. It's about understanding that emotional baggage is optional, even when it seems permanent. The process begins with awareness. Start by noticing the thoughts that create weight in your body. Pay attention to the stories you tell yourself about your past, your present, your future. Observe how much mental energy you spend on things you cannot control or change. Become curious about the beliefs you hold about what is possible at your age. Then comes the practice of release. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that the pain does not exist. It means feeling what needs to be felt and then letting it pass through you, instead of storing it in your body. It means mourning losses completely, so that they do not become permanent residents in your heart. It means forgiving not because others deserve it, but because you deserve freedom. The practice of release also involves learning to say no without guilt, to disappoint others without collapsing, to prioritize your own needs without excuses. It means recognizing that selfishness and self-care are not the same thing, that boundaries are not walls, that loving others does not require sacrificing yourself. As you begin to release these emotional burdens, something magical happens. The space they occupied does not remain empty. It fills with lightness, with possibility, with a kind of joy you may not have felt since childhood. You discover energy you forgot you had. You find yourself interested in things that hadn't intrigued you for years. You feel hopeful about the future in ways that surprise you. The lightness I am describing is not the absence of depth or avoidance of reality. It's not about becoming superficial or disconnected. True emotional lightness comes from having the courage to feel everything fully and then letting go. It comes from embracing both joy and sadness without clinging to either. It comes from understanding that you are not your circumstances, your history, or other people's opinions about you. This lightness allows you to move through the world differently. Conflicts that once consumed you become minor irritations that pass quickly. Disappointments that once devastated you become temporary setbacks that you navigate with grace. Fears that once paralyzed you become challenges that you meet with curiosity instead of dread. The 1% of women who achieve this lightness share certain characteristics. They have learned to distinguish between what they can control and what they cannot, investing their energy only in the former. They developed the ability to be present in the moment instead of being lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. They have cultivated relationships that energize rather than drain, and have learned to be alone without being lonely. More importantly, they discovered that aging doesn't have to mean accumulating weight. Each year can actually bring more freedom, more clarity, more joy, if you are willing to do the work of conscious release. They understand that wisdom is not about carrying more, it's about knowing what to let go. If you recognize yourself in the patterns I've described, if you feel the weight of the emotional baggage you've been carrying for years, I want you to know that change is possible at any age. The beliefs that say it's too late, that you are too old, that you can't change, these are just more burdens you can choose to release. The journey from heavy to light is not easy, but it is simple. It requires honesty about what you are carrying, the courage to examine why you are carrying it, and a commitment to the continuous practice of letting go. It means being willing to disappoint others in the service of your own emotional freedom. It means choosing growth over comfort, truth over familiarity, lightness over the heavy identity you have worn for so long. I want to leave you with this thought. You spent decades taking care of others, meeting expectations, carrying burdens that were never yours to bear. You have earned the right to live lightly. You have earned the right to let go of what does not serve you. You have earned the right to discover who you are when you are not burdened by old pain, impossible patterns, and the needs of others. The lightness I am describing is your birthright, not a privilege reserved for a few lucky ones. It is available to you right now, at this very moment, if you are willing to begin the process of conscious release. Start with a burden, a complaint, a should that you are ready to let go of. Notice how it feels to create space in your life for something lighter, something that brings joy instead of obligation. The transformation I am describing does not happen overnight, but it can begin in an instant. It starts with a single recognition that you have been living as if happiness is something to be earned through suffering, as if peace is something to be achieved through struggle, as if joy is a luxury that can only be afforded after everyone's needs have been met. But what if I told you that the opposite is true? And if your happiness, your peace, your joy were not the reward for a well-lived life, but the foundation from which a truly meaningful life emerges? And if living lightly were not selfishness, but the most generous gift you could give to the world? When you carry heavy emotional baggage, you are not just hurting yourself, you are showing up in every relationship, every interaction, every moment of your life as a diminished version of who you could be. Your children, your grandchildren, your friends are not receiving the best of you. They are receiving what is left of you after you have spent your energy fighting with ghosts from your past. But when you choose to live lightly, when you release the burden of old resentments and impossible expectations, something miraculous happens. You become a source of lightness for others. Your presence becomes a gift instead of a drain. Your wisdom becomes accessible because it is not buried under layers of bitterness and regret. I have seen this transformation countless times. Women who spent decades being the emotional dumping ground of the family suddenly discover that they can be the source of joy for the family. Women who have carried the criticism of their mothers for 50 years discover that when they let it go, they become encouraging voices in the lives of their own children. Women who clung to their ex-husband's betrayals as sacred relics discover that forgiveness does not excuse his behavior. It frees them to love more fully in the present. This is what living lightly looks like in practice. You wake up in the morning, and instead of immediately rehearsing your list of worries, you notice the quality of the light coming through the window. You have a conversation with your adult child without mentally cataloguing all the ways he is not living up to your expectations. You make a decision based on what brings joy instead of what you think you should do. Living lightly means you stop being the family historian of every offense, every disappointment, every unmet expectation. You stop being the guardian of everyone else's emotional baggage. You stop treating your pain as a treasure that must be protected and preserved. But here's what might surprise you. When you let go of those heavy burdens, you don't become superficial or indifferent. You don't lose your depth or your wisdom. Instead, you become more present, more available, more genuinely loving. You become the person you were destined to be before life taught you that suffering was noble and struggle was virtuous. You who made this change describe it in remarkably similar ways. You talk about feeling as if you could breathe fully for the first time in decades. You describe a sense of spaciousness in your life, as if rooms that were cluttered with invisible baggage suddenly had space to move and dance. You talk about rediscovering parts of yourself that you thought were lost forever. Your sense of playfulness, your curiosity, your capacity for spontaneous joy. A woman told me, "I realized that I had lived my entire adult life as if I were in mourning, lamenting my childhood, lamenting my marriage, lamenting the life I thought I should have. When I finally allowed myself to stop mourning what never was and what couldn't be changed, I discovered that I was still alive. Not just surviving, but vibrantly, joyfully alive. This is the choice that is available to you. Not someday, when you have worked through every issue or resolved every relationship, or achieved some impossible standard of emotional perfection. Right now, in this moment, you can start living as if your happiness mattered, as if your peace were valuable, as if your joy were not a luxury, but a necessity. The practical steps are simpler than you might think, but they require courage. They require you to disappoint people who have gotten used to your martyrdom. They require you to stop participating in conversations that drain your energy. Stop taking responsibility for other people's emotions. Stop making yourself small so that others can feel big. It means saying no to the family reunion that leaves you drained, even if it disappoints your siblings. It means refusing to engage in the same circular discussion with your adult child about their life choices. It means stopping the mental loop that reproduces every mistake you've ever made and every opportunity you've missed. It means choosing, repeatedly, to focus on what is alive and possible instead of what is dead and unchangeable. It means treating your emotional energy as precious and finite instead of as an unlimited resource that everyone else has the right to consume. This is not about becoming selfish or indifferent. This is about becoming so full of your own life force, so connected to your own joy, so grounded in your own worth, that you have something real and valuable to offer to others. This is about showing up as your full self instead of a shadow of who you could be. The world doesn't need another woman who sacrificed her liveliness at the altar of others' expectations. The world needs women who are so connected to their own light that they illuminate everything around them. The world needs women who have learned to live lightly, not because their problems have disappeared, but because they have stopped giving their problems the power to define their entire existence. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. These are not the years of practice. This is your one precious life, and every day you spend carrying unnecessary weight is a day you are not fully alive. Each moment you spend rehearsing old grievances is a moment not available for new joy. Each hour you spend trying to control what cannot be controlled is an hour not present for what is truly happening. The choice is clear and urgent. You can spend your remaining years as a curator of old pain, or you can become an artist of new possibility. You can continue to define yourself by what you have survived, or you can define yourself by how fully you are willing to live. You can continue carrying the heavy identity you have used for so long, or you can embrace the lightness that is your birthright. You who make this choice do not regret it. You only regret having waited so long to make it. You would wish you had given yourself permission years earlier to let go of what was never yours to carry, to stop apologizing for taking up space, to stop treating your own happiness as an afterthought. But you also know that it's never too late. Whether you are 50 or 70 or 90, whether you have decades ahead of you or just a few precious years, you still have time to live lightly. You still have time to discover who you are when you are not burdened by everything you think you should be. This content was inspired by the teachings of Walter Riso. If you want to delve deeper, I recommend his books Detachment and To Love or To Depend. The invitation is here, right now, at this very moment. Are you going to accept it? Comment below. Which of these 6 emotional burdens do you identify with the most? If this video resonated with you, share it with a friend who needs to hear this. In the next video, we will delve deeper into Walter Riso's concept of detachment as applied to our adult children.